So Macklemore has put out another pro-Palestine banger. And it's not only about Palestine, it's also about the current sort of fascist position we find ourselves in. But he talks extensively about Palestine, about Gaza and Trump, and he mentions Netanyahu a bunch. So clearly that's still the main thing on his mind. And it's just interesting, man. It's, you know, he's really finding a resurgence in his credibility. A lot of people are discovering a newfound respect for Macklemore. And I just think it's interesting. I've followed him for a while, actually. I was a fan of a couple songs that he had put out before the Thrift Shop song came. There was like one that was about drug addiction, and he had this other song called Wings that's about sneakers. And so they're cool songs. He was taking big swings, you know, big fancy videos, and the songs are very dramatic. I went back and listened to them recently, and it's very drama queen. Macklemore is a theater kid at heart. And I don't know if that really tracks to his background, but it has to. I mean, that really is the energy. And it feels like some of his stuff, especially from that era, that early era, is very like kind of stage show oriented, which isn't that different from what somebody like Kendrick Lamar, how he says he approaches his music. He's talked about how he approaches it like a stage show. But when Kendrick does it, you get a little bit more of that like authenticity of street culture and a street perspective that I don't think people ever got from Macklemore. He has a way of delivering his message, and it just comes off a little bit corny. I mean, he's a white rapper. Being corny is baked into it. I'm also a white rapper, so, you know, I share in cringe solidarity with him there. You know, it's just part of it. And in my opinion, it's a reason that you have to be more thoughtful about what you choose to talk about. Because in the post-Eminem era, the story of the struggling white boy from America just isn't that compelling anymore. And there's been a lot of people who have tried to replicate that type of story, and it comes from an honest place. You know, people like NF or whoever else. It's like you get that same energy, like I struggled too, and you know, I'm real too. That's kind of the energy, because a lot of rappers are very self-focused, and that's really the difference between Macklemore right now and the rest of rap right now. And I think that you could definitely make that same criticism about Macklemore. And I remember Anthony Fantano said that at one point he dropped a song, I think in the original iteration of Black Lives Matter, Macklemore dropped a song relating to Black Lives Matter protests, and it was a little bit more self-focused. It wasn't, you know, focused on making a statement about this moment, this time we're in. And I remember that criticism. I think that was a poignant criticism at the time, and that was right before Macklemore kind of disappeared for a while. Not saying it was because of that criticism, but I think that that was the sense where it's like, you know, I felt him ducking away from the limelight, because it's like, what does a guy like me really have to say right now? And that, well, I think it's kind of a form of like neuroticism, to constantly evaluate what do I have to say? What's the value between what I'm putting out there? You know, it's just the same way of being self-focused, but it also shows that there's a sense of like, here's what's going on right now. Here's what it seems like is needed. And I have to evaluate whether or not what I'm putting out there is needed. And so there was a long time where Macklemore kind of went away. And I think he was still making and releasing music that whole time, but not in a mainstream way. You know, he had a huge amount of success with that Thrift Shop song. And I think for a guy like him, it's like, man, I'm being successful off the merit of this crazy, corny song. Like, I could just keep doing that, but that's not really authentic to why I want to do this in the first place. You know, Macklemore has always wanted to be taken seriously. He's always wanted to be an artist that is speaking to serious things that are happening in culture in general, not just black culture or hip hop culture, but like all of our culture. And I think that's the point of hip hop. And I think that anybody who has an interest in doing that and a good heart should do their best, because I do think more voices like that are needed in hip hop, and just in any creative vector at all. I notice it in hip hop because that's the world that I'm in. But like, you know, I think it's not a lack of authenticity, it's a lack of thoughtfulness about what am I going to say, you know what I mean? And there's just not a lot of rappers doing that, or if they are, it's in a little bit more of a self-focused fashion. And I could say that Kendrick's Super Bowl performance might be another example of that. There were certainly imagery and underlying messages that were going at something larger, but when it comes to the real statement that Kendrick made, it was focused on this beef and proving himself the winner of this beef once and for all. And I can appreciate the subliminal messages that were layered in there, but you know, I don't think that was the core message that he really broadcasted to everyone. What he broadcasted to everyone was, you know, fuck Drake, I'm the winner. And that's great. That's hip hop as fuck, but it is also an example of the self-focus. And so, in other words, what I'm getting to here is I think what Macklemore has that a lot of rappers don't is the ability to think outside of himself and think about like what's something that needs to be said right now. Not just something that's going to build up my career, not just something that's going to make my fans happy and comfortable and give them a song they can play in the car in the summer or whatever. But like what is lacking in the conversation right now, and how can I add that? And you know, him doing that within the realm of hip hop, I don't think it's a reflection that he's better than other rappers, or even other rappers who are conscious, other rappers who are not conscious. I don't think it's a sign that he is like some special savior of hip hop. What it is, it's a sign that he's thinking about the world deeply and realistically, not in a spiritual sort of vague sense, but in a real sense. What's really happening in the world and what can I say about it? And I do think that there's a lack of that type of specificity from a lot of rappers. And I've thought this for a long time. Macklemore is in no way the catalyst for me thinking about this. It's the reason I've been rapping about politics for a long time, for the past 8 years at least, is because it just seemed like there was a lack of that. And I noticed that there were a lot of very specific things that felt like they needed to be articulated specifically in the context of a rap song. And I just wasn't hearing it from anybody. And meanwhile, on the other side, you got Kanye pulling out Super Bowl ads to sell nothing but a single t-shirt that has a swastika on it. That's what Kanye's up to. And so, I mean, it's really important for people to like create a contrasting message to that, because Kanye is one of the biggest voices in hip hop still. He still is. And, you know, Macklemore's voice comparatively is nothing. But, you know, if we're not making a strong case against what Kanye's doing, then there's a lot of kids out there who don't have the same understanding of what hip hop is or where it comes from that a lot of us might have. And allowing Kanye to pull more and more kids like that in the wrong direction is unacceptable. So I don't really care who the messenger is. I really don't. But we need more messaging that's going to pull people in a more positive direction and pull people away from fascism. What better place is there for that than hip hop? And I'll give some credit to the underground, by the way. People like Armand Hammer, Elucid, Billy Woods, people like Gace Guevara, if I pronounce his name right, you know, they're definitely on that anti-fascist shit, or at least talking about it specifically enough in their music that you get the message clearly. And that's dope. And that, I think, is the new front of like real representation of hip hop culture. And so those guys are great voices for that, but we just need more of it. We need more of it on a mainstream level. We need more of it on a middle stream level, on an underground level, on every level. Like, we need to occupy as much space within hip hop with unabashed anti-fascism, you know, support for colonized peoples. Like that 100%, we have to constantly give voice to that within music in any possible way that we can, because fascists are working hard to appropriate that space. I've been saying it for years. We can't let it happen. So it's a little refreshing at this point to hear Macklemore kind of getting to that level a little bit more with his songwriting. And I think it's needed. I think he's not necessarily the best voice for it either. It would be nice to see other rappers who are a little bit more tapped in with the culture and bigger platforms like the Super Bowl and giant stadium performances and stuff to get a little bit more specific. That's been my critique of hip hop for a long time, is we're not specific enough. And we are up against very specific political and like socioeconomic challenges right now that are presented not just by the Trump administration, but in large part by the Trump administration, the first one and now the second one. And if we don't get specific, we're not going to be able to push back and educate people the way that we need to. And that's part of what hip hop is for. And I don't care if somebody's white or black or whatever they are. If you're in hip hop, that's what you should be aiming at. But especially if you're white. If you're white, you definitely should be trying to speak to the most productive possible message that you can. Because I think that there is a responsibility that comes with that. And, you know, there should be more pressure on white rappers and white people in hip hop to not just speak out, but to choose the right issues to put their voice behind so that we can kind of keep pushing not just the culture of hip hop, but the culture of America in general, the culture of young people in America, young people in the world. You know, hip hop is a force that should be pushing people in the right direction, pushing people towards progress, pushing people towards liberation. That's what Macklemore is catching on to right now. And it's the reason that people are relating to his music now in a way that they didn't the first time he was huge. And I think part of it too is that the generation has turned over a little bit. And so there's a lot of people engaging with Macklemore's work now that weren't really around the first time he kind of did the rounds. And so he's getting a chance to make an impression again, and he's chose the topic well. He's talking about something that nobody else is talking about it. He's using specifics, and he's doing it in a way that feels refreshing. And so, you know, I think that there's a responsibility that comes with being a white rapper to choose those type of topics and to speak as forcefully as you can and get behind the right causes. But I think everybody should be doing it. And we should all use Macklemore, as crazy as it sounds, as an example of like how to put ourselves out there in the right way, risk our own fucking ass if we need to do it, and, you know, speak up for people that need to be spoken for. And if you feel like white people should be the ones risking their ass first, that's fair. But, you know, I don't disagree with that. That's why I do it. And I think that's why Macklemore is doing it as well. But in general, we all need to do it. And the fact that Macklemore is one of the first people to make major waves by talking about this is not just a white rapper problem. It's an every rapper problem. It's an everybody problem. And him throwing himself behind that is not only going to make people gain a lot of respect for him, but it gives him more relevance. You know, that's the other thing about talking politics in a specific way is like, if you do it right, it makes you way more relevant, in my opinion, because you're talking about what's happening. The hard part is, how do you put what's going on in the world and the specifics of it in a song in the way that can make a difference, make an impact, and not sound cheesy or overbearing? That's really the challenge. It's not easy to do. And I think Macklemore, kind of achieves that. I'm still not the biggest fan of his like delivery and inflection, which is why I say that there could be better voices for this message, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is the message. And that's what Macklemore has caught on to that I think other people need to take note of, is by attaching himself to a important message that has strength and resilience behind it. That is giving him a lot of credibility that he didn't have before. And I will give him the credit of saying that he's always been an artist who attempts to do that. And so I'm glad that it's working for him now, and that he can be a voice not just for Palestinians and Gazans, but at this point, all Americans. So I think everybody should go check out the song, go give it a listen. Maybe drop what you think in the comments. I'm curious to know. And yeah, just whatever it is that people do out there, I know there's tons of creative people in this audience, and yeah, find ways to do what he's doing and be really specific, call shit out, make no apologies, and let them know when they got you fucked up. If If you like this video, like and subscribe, drop a comment. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to be one of the core supporters of the show. I'm dropping exclusive content on there, exclusive songs. If you like the beats that play, all of those are going to be posted as exclusive content, at least at first. And if you have other ideas for stuff that you would like to see as exclusive content and things like that, let me know.